Chosen ones, have you felt that something inside you changed silently, but radically? Before, your hobbies were a source of joy, identity, and even refuge. But after awakening, suddenly what seemed essential begins to lose its shine. The music that used to move you sounds like noise. The painting that once freed your soul now seems forced. The sport, the games, even the simple pleasure of certain conversations stop making sense. This may seem scary, as if something has died inside you. But the truth is that nothing wrong happened. On the contrary, you have entered a deep phase of spiritual transformation. This means that everything based on the ego and the masks of the persona will be dissolved. And yes, this includes hobbies that once served as armor, as a way to prove who you were. Now that veil has fallen, and what remains is a void. This void is not an enemy. It is a sign of growth. It is the preparation for a new cycle in which your passions will not be moved by ego, but by authenticity and soul. Today, we will walk through the stages that show how this apparent loss is, in fact, a path to liberation. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Before the spiritual awakening, your hobbies were more than distractions. They were parts of your identity. Playing, painting, singing, running, writing, shopping, all of it said something about you. They served as banners you raised to the world. You presented yourself based on what you did, not on what you felt. If you played well, you were the competitive one. If you painted, you were the sensitive and creative one. If you sang, you earned applause. If you ran, you were seen as disciplined. Hobbies gained the status of labels. They weren't just pleasures. They were ways to be accepted, praised, validated, an extension of the ego. And the ego, by its nature, always wants to show something. These activities worked because they fit the masks you wore without realizing it. You were what you did, and you did what the world found beautiful, interesting, or respectable. Even when it seemed like a free choice, there was a hidden desire to be seen, to be admired, to be recognized. It was subtle, but real. But then awakening arrived, and what once defined you begins to lose its strength. That which excited you no longer moves you. The game lost its charm. Painting became effort. The music grew soulless. You try to persist, but you can't find that connection anymore. The shine faded. At this point, many chosen people get scared. They feel as if something is wrong. Am I depressed? Am I losing interest in life? But what's happening isn't a fall. It's a release. You didn't lose the will by accident. What ended was the fuel of the ego. And now something new is being born. Awakening is a process of emptying. It dismantles what was appearance to reveal what is essence. And hobbies, no matter how harmless they seemed, were often shields, tests of worth, ways of affirming identity. When this dissolves, there is silence. There remains the "and now." But this emptiness is sacred. That is where you begin to understand. I am not what I do. I am what I am. True identity does not come from performance, but from presence, from being, not doing. This insight changes everything. The need to prove oneself ceases to exist. The world can wait. The soul, not. The break with identification with the hobby is a portal to self-knowledge. It forces you to look inward, to ask yourself, who am I without this? That question hurts at first, but brings freedom. Because when you free yourself from the role you played, you can finally be whole. It is natural to miss the old excitement, but that longing is not for the activity. It is for the version of you who still believed you had to be someone to deserve love. And when that illusion falls away, what remains is the path inward. The journey of the soul begins here, in the space the hobby has left. If you are living this, don't blame yourself. Don't force yourself to return to what no longer feeds you. Just breathe and accept. What is happening is deep. You are not losing your shine. You are letting the mask fall. And only without the mask can you truly shine, with your own light. Remember the time when everything seemed more exciting? When winning a game, posting a milestone, or receiving a compliment was enough to feel good. That gave a kind of immediate pleasure. But time passes, awakening arrives, and suddenly these same things begin to lose their taste. The soul starts to reject what once appeased the void. You try to repeat the same habits, the same hobbies, the same paths, but something changed inside. What was sweet becomes bland. What used to be a point of pride now seems meaningless. It's as if the shine had been turned off from the inside. This happens because the motivation that moved your actions is no longer active. Before, the ego was the fuel. It sought to conquer, to be noticed, to prove value. It worked. For a while, it seemed enough. But awakening changes that. The soul, when it starts to speak louder, no longer accepts superficial rewards. This moment is challenging. You ask yourself, have I lost the joy of living? But that's not it. What happened was a change of direction. Now the soul is in control. And it is not satisfied with applause or likes. It wants truth. It wants depth. It wants connection. The ego is no longer the engine. This is a point of rupture. A crisis of meaning appears. Nothing seems enough. What used to motivate you now seems shallow. Even praise sounds empty. You realize that you did a lot to feel accepted, loved, or respected. But the soul no longer wants approval. It wants authentic expression without performance. The problem is not the hobby itself. It is the motive behind it. When the reason was to be seen, recognized, or even to escape pain, it fed an external need. But when that loses strength, the motivation disappears, and with it, pleasure too. The emptiness left is an invitation to something new. It is at this moment that the external world loses control over you. You no longer depend on other people's reactions to feel good. But that still does not bring peace immediately. First, it brings estrangement. You try to re-find yourself and you can't. But it is because a new way of relating to life is being born. The soul wants to do things with purpose, not for performance. For love, not for validation. And that takes time. It is a slow but true process. When you understand this, you stop beating yourself up for not feeling energized. And you begin to listen more kindly to what your inner self truly desires to live. You are not losing joy. You are finding a deeper joy. One that does not depend on success, recognition, or applause. A joy that arises from presence, from being whole in what you do, even if no one sees. This joy is quiet, but it is yours, and it is arriving. When the spiritual awakening begins, one of the most striking feelings is emptiness. You look at the things that used to give you joy and you feel nothing. The days seem quieter, the moments slower. It seems you have lost something essential, but you don't know exactly what. This emptiness can be scary, but it did not come to punish you. In fact, it is a sacred space. It is the fertile ground where the new will be planted. Yet before that, it needs to be cleaned. The emptiness is the moment between what died and what is still going to be born. You are not broken. You are in transition. You are crossing a kind of spiritual desert that prepares your soul for something greater. This period is uncomfortable because it pulls you out of your comfort zone. Without the hobbies, without the stimuli, without the distractions that used to fill you, you are left with yourself. And often this yourself is someone you are still getting to know. This can bring fear, confusion, and even sadness. But all of this is part of the journey. Many call this moment the dark night of the soul. It's as if the soul were saying, now is the time to look inward without distractions. And when you accept this invitation, you begin to see things that were hidden. Old fears, pains you pushed under the rug, parts of you that were forgotten. The emptiness invites you to stop fleeing. It removes external sound so you can hear the inner voice. It breaks distractions so you can see what needs to be healed. It dismantles the scenarios of your life so you can build something new, with consciousness, soul, and truth. It is not punishment. It is preparation. You will miss what passed. You will try to relive what used to make you happy. But nothing will be as it was, because you are no longer the same. Awakening changes your way of feeling the world, and therefore, it is natural that what once served you now seems small. This is not ingratitude, it is evolution. In the emptiness, you begin to realize that everything that used to animate you also distracted you. Sometimes it was an escape disguised as passion. Now that escape no longer works, silence arises, and this silence may seem dark, but it holds revelations. It is the space where the soul speaks louder. This is where you learn to feel without stimulation, to live without a mask, to be present even when nothing is happening. This is spiritual maturity, and it is not achieved with haste. It takes courage to cross this emptiness without seeking shortcuts. But in doing so, you find yourself. The emptiness is the beginning of a new construction. It is like the silence before the music, like the solo before the seed, like the space between breath and word. It is in this interval that something true begins to be born. And this birth, though slow, brings meaning. It brings depth. It brings soul. If you are in this moment, embrace the process. Do not try to fill the emptiness with the old. Wait, listen, feel. Trust that something new is being gestated within you. And when this new thing comes, it will not be a pastime. It will be an expression of your most authentic self. With the loss of hobbies, a silence emerges. And in that silence, something begins to rise. The shadow. It has always been there, hidden behind distractions, commitments, and activities. But now, without the old habits, it gains space. And with that, you start to see parts of yourself that were once forgotten or rejected. The shadow is made of everything you avoided feeling. The sadness you muffled by shopping. The loneliness that was masked by empty conversations. The anxiety that was relieved with shopping, binge-watching series, outings, or tasks. Now that these mechanisms no longer work, the inner truth begins to appear. And it isn't always comfortable. It's common to feel fear at this moment. After all, no one likes to face their wounds head-on. But this encounter is necessary. Spiritual awakening is not only to illuminate you, but also to purify you. And purification begins with truth. When the hobby goes away, what was hidden reveals itself. It is inevitable. This phase may seem confusing. You may wonder, am I depressed? Has something inside me broken? You are being healed. What hurts is not the loss, but the birth of something new. Pain is not failure. It is a sign of inner movement. Your soul is reorganizing everything inside. You do not need to fight against the shadow. It is not an enemy. It is part of your story. It guards the traumas, the fears, the childhood voids, the words that hurt you, the silences that wounded you. When you welcome it, it stops shouting. When you listen to it, it becomes wisdom. In this process, you learn to stay with yourself. Learn to feel without fleeing. Learn to look at your parts with less judgment. This is self-compassion, and it is one of the greatest strengths you can develop, because the one who embraces their shadow becomes whole, and the one who becomes whole no longer lives by appearances. Over time, you begin to realize that this darkness also carries gifts. You become more sensitive, more authentic, more intuitive. You come to know yourself more deeply. And then, what was once a cause of pain becomes the basis for something new. The shadow, when integrated, becomes light. Do not be alarmed if everything seems disorganized. This interior mess is like remodeling a house. The old must go out, the walls must fall, the dust must rise. Only then does the new begin to take shape. And this new house will be built with truth, presence, and soul. If you feel you are at this point on the path, take a deep breath. You are exactly where you need to be. The loss of hobbies was only the beginning. Now comes the re-encounter with yourself. And this reunion, even if difficult, is the greatest gift that awakening can offer you. When you realize you no longer feel pleasure in the things you once loved, the first sensation is loss. It's as if a part of you has died, and in a sense it truly has. The hobbies that occupied so much space in your life were more than activities. They were characters you wore without noticing. You identified with what you did. You were the passionate reader, the competitive gamer, the creative artist, the adventurous traveler. Each of these roles gave shape to your identity. They filled time, occupied your mind, and helped you feel you had a place in the world. When these roles stop making sense, the void arrives. This void is the mourning of the old self. It's not just longing for the activity itself, but for the version of you that existed through it. You miss who you were when you were playing, creating, studying, or expressing yourself. It seems you've lost a piece of your own soul, but actually, you're just letting go of what no longer defines you.
Spiritual awakening requires courage to let go of what no longer serves. Carl Jung said that true growth comes with the symbolic death of the previous identity. This can be confusing. After all, you invested time, love, and energy in these activities. They saved you in many moments. Honoring that is part of the process. Allow yourself to feel the mourning. Cry if necessary. Sit in silence. Fondly remember everything these hobbies represented. There is no shame in feeling nostalgia. There's no mistake in looking back with affection. This shows you had real, intense experiences that were important to your journey so far. But don't get lost in this mourning. Remember, what died was the mask, not the essence. Your true self is only awakening. It is surfacing beneath the layers that were created to please, protect, or fit in. Now that these layers are falling away, something much more authentic can flourish. You don't need to run to fill the void, nor try to recreate what has passed. This space is precious. It is the interval between the old and the new. It is where the soul breathes, where you listen to yourself truly, without interference. And it's where answers begin to emerge from within. Mourning also teaches patience. It shows that not every pain requires an immediate solution. Some require only time, presence, and care. Gradually, you'll realize that behind the longing there is freedom. You aren't trapped by any version of yourself. You can change, evolve, be reborn as many times as needed. The old self was important, but it fulfilled its mission. You no longer need to carry the weight of being who you once were. A new cycle begins now, and this cycle will not be defined by labels or characters. It will be guided by truth, presence, and soul. Mourning is only the bridge. When you're ready, cross that bridge with gratitude. Thank your past for everything it taught you. Thank the hobbies for having accompanied you until now. And then move forward with lightness, because the best is yet to come. And this time, it will be true, from start to finish.
After the dark phase, a new light begins to emerge. It is gentle, almost imperceptible at first, but it is there. You start to feel the desire to do things again. Yet now this desire comes from another place. It is no longer to show something to the world. It is to live something inside yourself. Pleasure has changed direction. Perhaps you will return to painting, but not for status or validation. Now, painting is a form of meditation, a way to connect with yourself. Maybe music returns, but as prayer, not as performance. What was once done for image is now done for the soul. The intention has changed, and with it, everything gains a new meaning. You might even discover new passions, walking in silence, cultivating plants, writing thoughts, watching the sky. None of this needs an audience. The meaning is no longer in the outcome. It is in the process. You do not act to achieve something. You act because it makes sense. This is living with authenticity. This new way of living is quiet, but deep. You realize that presence is more valuable than productivity. That feeling matters more than doing. You no longer need to prove yourself. You only need to be fully present in what you do. And that is enough. That fulfills. That heals. The soul does not want haste. It wants truth. In the beginning, it may seem too simple. You may ask yourself, is this enough? Yes, it is. Because now you do not seek intensity to escape the void. You find peace in the small things, and these small things are real, solid, and nourishing. They anchor you. They bring you back to within yourself. The new meaning does not shout. It whispers. It appears when you stop seeking outside and start listening inside. And when you listen, you understand. I do not need applause. I do not need to impress anyone. What I need is to live in a way that makes my soul smile, even if no one sees. And perhaps, one day, the old hobbies will return. But they will return differently. They will return purified, without attachment, without vanity, without need to prove. They will be tools of expression and no longer crutches for the emotions. The soul uses doing, but does not depend on it. Because now, it already knows that value lies in being. This new phase is lighter, more silent, and more true. You no longer get lost in the search for approval. You no longer chase prominence. You discover that being present is enough. And the simple act of breathing, feeling, and existing becomes a form of prayer. Chosen one, if you have come this far, know, the new has begun. And even if it seems small now, it is real. It is yours, and it will grow with you. Slowly, truthfully, with soul. Pleasure that comes from being does not need a stage. It sustains itself. And that is freedom. Chosen ones, if you have come this far and feel that nothing else makes sense as it did before, know that this is not a mistake. It is also not weakness. It is only the beginning of something much greater. What you are living is not the end. It is the crossing. It is the moment when the soul begins to take the place that has always been hers. The emptiness you feel, the lack of interest in the things that used to bring you joy, are not symptoms that something in you is broken. On the contrary, they are signs that something is being healed. You are no longer seeking distraction. You are seeking truth. And this, though silent, is one of the greatest signs of spiritual maturity. The ego for a long time guided your steps. It wanted to be seen, admired, validated. It created characters, built habits, shaped passions based on the need for acceptance. But now the ego is dissolving. And in this space that opens up, a new way of living is born. More authentic, deeper, more connected to your essence. This process is painful, yes, because it involves goodbyes. You are saying farewell to versions of yourself that no longer make sense. You are leaving behind habits that accompanied you for years. You are releasing labels that protected you, and this requires courage. But it is also a sign that you are ready for the next level of your journey. Carl Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you really are, beyond the masks, roles, and expectations. It is a solitary but transformative journey. In it, you stop living for others and begin living with the soul. And when that happens, everything changes. Even the way you feel pleasure and time. You do not need to rush. Rebirth does not happen all at once. It comes gradually, in small gestures, new desires, moments of presence. One day you wake up and feel like doing something simple, yet meaningful. It is the soul returning to express itself. And that is the beginning of a new life. The new phase that arrives will not be marked by performance, but by presence. Your new passions will not serve to hide what you feel, but to reveal who you are. And this chosen one is freedom. It is lightness. It is truth. It is what the soul has always waited for to finally flourish. So if today everything seems to be paused or disconnected, take a deep breath. You are in a process of rebirth. And like every birth, this one also requires silence, time, and care. But know, on the other side of this transition, there is a life that suits who you have become, and it is waiting for you with open arms. If this content spoke to you, share it here in the comments. Tell how your process has been. Perhaps your experience is exactly what someone else needs to read today. And remember, you are not alone. We are all awakening, each in our own time, each on our own path, but all with a common purpose, living with soul.